Hey, what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again for another video, and this time we are talking about the Star Wars questionnaire. This is a questionnaire that was circulating online around 2016. I actually did do a video about this 2.5–3 years ago now, so you could take a look at that. But I wanted to revisit this because while I haven't seen that video in a long time, I feel like some of my answers have changed, and I thought it was a good way to start kicking off some more Star Wars content that I wanted to add to this channel. As you can see, I'm actually working on a set for Star Wars. I may keep this, I may switch it up completely, who knows. But anyway, without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so the first question on the list is Jedi or Sith. And this, for the most part, I thought it was going to be easier, than I thought. Naturally, I want to just say Jedi. I feel like a lot of my personal philosophies lean towards the Jedi. And, I, for the most part, practice nonviolence. I think I'm a pretty easygoing person to get along with and things like that. The Sith, though, there are qualities of the Sith that I can get behind. For instance, their willingness to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And don't get me wrong, the Sith, for the most part, are murderous and bloodthirsty, but also in some regards, I think that they are victims of history being written by the victors, the Jedi and the Republic, right? And they kind of demonize and villainize them, and it makes me wonder if everything really happened the way they said it did, or can the Sith be justified in some of their actions? And in a lot of cases, I feel like we saw that, and maybe that's a topic for another day. But overall, I'm still going to go with the Jedi. Despite their flaws, I think that their hearts are in the right place, and I think that they really want to do the right thing and help people. And so for that, I'm going to go with Jedi. Okay, question number 2 on the list is favorite worlds. And for me, if I were going to pick a world in the Star Wars universe to live on, I would say either a cross between Naboo and Dantooine. Although I think I give the slight edge to Dantooine. Dantooine, the landscape is very much like the landscape I live on here on the plains of the United States, and rolling hills and fields of green and things like that. Just a nice simple environment, lakes and rivers, and the terrain is very much akin to what I'm used to here in Kansas. Of course, same thing with Naboo. There's a lot of like rolling plains and beautiful waterfalls and things like that, and awesome mountains and that sort of thing on Naboo. So I think those kind of landscapes would probably play better towards what I'm used to. Cities like Coruscant, I think, are too big, and I feel like they would have an issue with pollution and everything else there. And jungle worlds like Felucia, no, that's a hard pass for me. So favorite world out of those two, I'm gonna lean more towards Dantooine because of the Jedi Enclave and the studies that I could do there as a Jedi. So next up, we have favorite vehicle, and for me, it's not really much of a contest. The X-Wing is the quintessential vehicle in Star Wars. It's a fast starfighter that's got good weaponry on it, decent armor. It can travel through the galaxy on its own. It doesn't need help like some of the other smaller fighters do. It's very versatile. It works as a interceptor. It can be used as a bomber, things like that. And so, I mean, the X-Wing is just iconic, and it's probably one of the most iconic vehicles in Star Wars, save for the Millennium Falcon, which, although that's a timeless design, I was never a huge fan of the way the Millennium Falcon looked. So for me, X-Wing all the way. Okay, this next one here, if I were a Jedi, who would I want my master to be? And that is a tough one. I'm leaning towards Jedi like Anya Kuro because she was extremely powerful, and she was quite the badass. She is very much a great Jedi in her philosophies. It's weird because she has a weird duality where she follows the rules of the Jedi to a T, but in some instances she's not afraid to break them. Like, for instance, in the lightsaber training, she would use elements of like the Mach technique that the Sith use to try to unbalance and shake her students, and training with her was extremely brutal, but her students were known as some of the best swordsmen in their group. So I would say her, but I'm leaning more towards Shakti. Shakti is one of my favorites. She is a Togruta who was extremely powerful. She lived during the Clone Wars era, although both of her Padawans did die before they reached knighthood. So that's a concern. I don't know. That's a concern, but yeah, I would pick one of those two. I like their teachings, I like their skill sets, and I feel like that's a lot of things that they could pass towards me. So yeah, those would be my Jedi Masters. Next question is, if I were a Sith, who would my Sith Master be? And this one, I had to think about this one too, because it doesn't really matter who my Sith Master would be. Life as a Sith apprentice would be awful. And I mean, I would suffer a lot of torture and things like that. But if I had to pick a Sith Master, my Sith Master would be Darth Tyrannus, aka Count Dooku. And the reasons for that is he has advanced knowledge of the dark side and the light side. I think that Dooku is an educator at heart. He's had many apprentices as a Jedi and a Sith. And you can tell that he really enjoys teaching. He really enjoys passing his knowledge to someone else. And so while I think the training would be brutal, I think at the end of it, he and I would stand as equals before I ran my lightsaber through his back and assumed the mantle of Dark Lord. So, Darth Tyrannus, aka Count Dooku. Okay, if I were a Sith, who would my Sith name be? This one is kind of tough too. I wouldn't choose anything that's like, aggressive or like dark or anything like that. I think if I had a Darth name, it would be maybe another word or term for knowledge, because again, I think my Sith Master Dooku is very much an educator, and for that reason, knowledge would be one of the things that I would seek, and I think it's something that he would encourage me to do. So in that sense, maybe learning or giver of knowledge, something like that, whatever. So I don't know if you know a cool name, because Darth Knowledge doesn't sound cool, so it have to sound a little exotic to me, but it would be something like that. Yeah, so that would be my Darth name. Okay, next up we've got favorite film in the franchise, and again, this one is not much of a surprise. It is The Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back was episode 5 in the series, and I enjoy it for the darkness of it. They expanded on the Force and kind of the backstory and how the Jedi operate and things like that, and we see snippets of Luke's training with Yoda and see his progression, which was cool. We also rose my table up a little bit, but anyway, we also saw glimpses of the dark side. We got to see Sidious for the first time, who until this time we just assumed Darth Vader was the main bad guy, but with the entrance of Sidious, then we knew that there was more at stake. And I mean, the ending was just fantastic. It didn't end on a super happy note and all of that. And so for that, I mean, that would definitely be my favorite movie. That being said, a very close second is actually on the poster behind me, and it is Star Wars Rogue One. That to this day, that's my favorite. That's definitely my second favorite. And it's a pretty close second too. In my opinion, it's one of the best things that come out of the Disney adaptation of Star Wars, and it's just a great story that expands on the events of episode 4, and it basically ends right where episode 4 picks up. And so Darth Vader in that was fantastic. We got to see the workings of the Empire a little more closely for the military side. We also got an answer for why the Death Star had that super fatal flaw, which actually was pretty close to what was in the expanded universe in the Star Wars comic series. So that was really cool. I appreciate that because they were so faithful to, the source material. So I really enjoyed that one. Okay, guys, going through this list, I just realized that I skipped a major question in here, and that is, what would your lightsaber hilt be? Which lightsaber color would you choose? And what your fighting style would be? And to answer that question, I've actually got a lightsaber here that I'm going to be reviewing shortly. This is actually a lightsaber of my own design, and shout out to Ultra Sabers for the good work that they do. These are all made with Ultra Sabers parts, and so you'll see here I use a white blade for it, and because I think that as a Jedi that I would definitely lean towards the gray side of the Force, and so I could see myself being an Ahsoka Tano like character and purifying some Sith crystals to make my lightsaber. And this is what I would have. Let me turn this off. Hold on just a second.
Force will be with you always.
Come on, how dope is that? But this is a lightsaber. It's about 12.25 inches long. It's great for two-handed grip, but I really like the balance of it, so it's really good for like a one-handed grip as well. I got flanged emitters, which I do like those, and overall I think this is just a fantastic lightsaber. It fits good in my hand and feels really good, so yeah, this is the lightsaber that I would build. And as far as fighting style goes, the reason why I made this, because I think it's very versatile for a number of fighting styles. If I could only pick one, the fighting style that I would choose would be Form 5, the Jim So variant, because I think it's the most complete form. You've got the teachings of the Form 5 Shien style in there, so I would be excellent at blaster deflection. Jim So is also a very dueling-centric style, so that would make me formidable in saber-to-saber combat. And yeah, overall I think that would be the style to pick if I could pick a style. Okay, continuing on, my least favorite Star Wars film. My least favorite Star Wars film is probably Attack of the Clones. It was just incredibly slow, and I did not care about the developing love story between Anakin and Padme and all of that. It was a hard watch, all up until about basically just the last act of the movie. Now, the last act of the movie is how you're supposed to do a Star Wars movie. The Battle of Geonosis was fire. I love the way they handle it when the clones swoop in. The battle with all the Jedi in the arena, and the Obi-Wan Anakin versus Dooku duel, and then we see Yoda come out and pull out his lightsaber, which a lot of people had problems with that. I thought it was totally fine, and yeah, the ending of that movie, absolutely superb, fantastic, but getting there is the hard part. A close second to that would be probably The Last Jedi. Same thing, there was a lot in The Last Jedi that I didn't really like. Like, it just from a lore standpoint, it was a hard watch. It was more entertaining than Attack of the Clones, but from a lore standpoint, it was all over the place. And then, of course, the spoiler alert, just killing off Luke at the end like that, and it was the cap on just the fact that they had completely disregarded everything that Luke had done in the expanded universe. So yeah, that was a very disturbing movie to watch from a fan's perspective. So yeah. Okay, next one is, if I could write a Star Wars novel, what would it be about? I would like to explore more of the Rule of Two era of Sith. I think we've got bits and pieces there. We know who the originators were with Darth Bane and Zana. We know she took on an apprentice named Cognis, who took on an apprentice named Millennial, and it kind of goes on and on. We don't know much about it until a few hundred years later with Darth Gravid and Darth Geen. We get a little bit on those two. Then we skip ahead some more until we learn about Tenebris and Plagueis and Sidious. And so there's a lot of large gaps in there in that 1,000-year period that I think could be told, and a lot of cool things. Of course, the right up until the Rule of Two era, like just exploring more of Darth Bane's story. I would like to see more of his lore canonized in Star Wars lore. So if I were writing like one of the Disney novels, I might write more about Darth Bane and just the Brotherhood of the Sith and all of that, or Brotherhood of Darkness and all of that. And so that would probably be the era I would dwell on. I think at this point the Skywalker storyline is kind of played out. Like, we know about all of that now. We know about how that's going to end, and I think that's been done to death. So I would like to see more of these obscure eras played out. And for as far as the Disney lore goes, they haven't explored much of the Old Republic. So I think that as a writer for Disney and writing my novel, that's exactly what I would do. So yeah. Okay, in my opinion, what's the best thing about the EU? Well, it's that the fact that you can flesh out, you can tell more stories. In just waiting for the movies are extremely expensive, especially Star Wars movies, and they take forever to come out. So I think the good thing about the EU is you can tell more of the story quicker, and you can tell more of the story without us having to wait for, the movies and all of that stuff to come out, and less risk of things being canceled. And so that's definitely what I like about the EU. It is a way for us to explore more Star Wars while we wait on the main storylines to play out. And so I think that's really cool, and something that I hope they focus on more, and I hope that they don't butcher everything about the Legends canon. So that's definitely one of my favorite things about that. Okay, least favorite thing about the EU, especially the Legends canon, was there were so many people working on it with little collaboration, so everybody was kind of telling their own stories. And even with the Legends canon as it is now, there were plenty of retcons and things going on that, this story doesn't match up with this story. And for Disney's part, calling that, not cutting it out completely, but calling that the Legends canon, that's what a legend is, right? Something that's told by multiple people, and this story might not match up 100% with this one, and things like that. And that's what happens to stories over time. Over time, they become legends and then myth and stuff like that. So, that is my biggest issue with it, though, that in a lot of cases we don't have like a concrete story, and a lot of things don't match up with each other. So that's my biggest problem with that. Okay, and here we are. The final question on the list is, what does Star Wars mean to you? Star Wars means to me, at this point in my life, because I've been a fan of Star Wars for over 20 years at this point, and Star Wars to me is in a lot of ways my childhood, and how I use Star Wars to view the world that I was growing up in and things like that. And there's a lot of parallels with Star Wars that I take into real life, not to the point where I just confuse Star Wars with real life, but it was looking at Star Wars was a way for me to kind of explain things to myself and interpret things in real life that maybe I didn't understand. Like, for instance, racial injustice and inequality and things like that I experienced firsthand growing up. I akined it to, the Rebel Alliance fighting for freedom and justice, and and things like that. So that's what Star Wars means to me. And despite the issues that the franchise is having now, I'm still a huge fan and still going to pay attention to whatever's going on. There actually is some exciting things going on. The Mandalorian, for instance, is a really cool series, and Dave Filoni is going to be getting more involved with The Mandalorian season 2 and 3, which is fantastic. He just wrapped up the Clone Wars with season 7, and it was awesome. And so props to Dave Filoni for doing that and being one of the, I feel like, even though he himself has had a few minor misses, he's one of the contributors to the new Star Wars lore that gets it, you know what I mean? And so shout out to Dave Filoni for that, and we're getting more content with Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is fantastic. And so there's a lot of exciting things going on in the Star Wars franchise, on the horizon. So I'll be here for every minute of it. And guys, that is pretty much it. That's all I got for today. Alright guys, so that is it. That's the list, but let's talk about it down below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What are some of your answers to the Star Wars questionnaire? Give me some of your favorites, or give me the whole list, or better yet, you can make a video of your own. Let me know about it so I can go check it out, and we can keep it moving. As always, if you enjoy this content, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.